Nope, there we go. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Call to order the August 4th, 2020 Goochland County Board of Supervisors meeting. We did reschedule the ribbon cutting for the Goochland Business Center and the County Registrar building till next month. And we just had our Audit and Finance Committee meeting, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So the invocation, our first order of business is Pastor David Clark from Calvary Chapel Church. Thank you.
I invite you all to pray with me. Father God, we are so thankful for your love and your mercies that are new every morning. Father, help us to always be mindful of your love for us. And Father, at this time, I pray that you give wisdom to the Board of Supervisors as they make decisions that bring glory to you. But Father, help the citizens that are here. Father, help us to do your business in a way that you would have them do it. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next order of business is the chair's comments, and I do have a couple of items today. First of all, we as representatives on the Board of Supervisors have received phone calls and correspondence from people in our community regarding racial discrimination in the county. Goochland County Board of Supervisors, the county, and county staff do not tolerate unequal treatment of any citizen based on race, religion, creed, or any other unlawful discriminatory factor, and we will not allow it in the future. As your elected government leaders in Goochland County, our focus is on our community. It's been our practice to identify problems and find ways to address them, and this is no different. So to that end, we are moving from talk to action, and we have reached out to our community leaders, asking them to join a work group of diverse individuals who will meet in person to have a generally constructive conversation about race relations and discrimination in Goochland County. This is a conversation that we enter focused on building a healthier and a safer community for all of our citizens. We have participation in this work group from our community leaders, law enforcement, criminal justice system, the faith community, public schools, social services, and we look forward to engaging with the community on this critical matter. Okay, that's the first item. The second is something completely different, and that is the county has just refinanced the Tuckahoe Creek Service District bond that will net Goochland County $12 million in savings. And I know that the Audit and Finance Committee just met and discussed this matter, and I'd like to depart from normal protocol and toss this to Mr. Peterson, who's the chair of that committee, to talk briefly about the ramifications.
Sure.
Mr. Peterson.
Yep, Madam Chair, thank you. As you mentioned, the Finance and Audit Committee just met immediately prior to this board meeting, and there were a couple of noteworthy items I'd like to bring forth and share with the full board. First, on June 30th, Goochland County finished its fiscal year 2020 budget year. And now that 2020 year is over, our outside auditors have begun their work, and that work will be completed around November of this year. But the good news is that we finished the year slightly ahead of the original budget for last year, despite the COVID crisis. And just a few months ago, that outcome looked fairly unlikely. But we did finish with a balanced budget and a slight surplus, and that's largely due to the credit of the county staff that's provided all of the services throughout the crisis, including running fire and EMS calls. Sheriff deputies responded to 911 emergencies, DMV staying open. All the county services were provided through the emergency, and yet we were able to deliver all those services through the crisis, through the emergency, on budget and on time. And so I just want to congratulate the county staff for their extraordinary efforts and thank them very much for those efforts. The other thing, there's more good news, as you mentioned. In July, we completed a debt refinancing of approximately $61 million worth of the Tuckahoe Creek Service District bonds. And that refi, as you mentioned, will save the district around $12 million in debt service payments. And the present value savings of that's about $8 to $9 million. A previous refinance was done in 2012 that lowered the near-term debt service payments and bought some badly needed time for some development to occur in that district. The refinance that we just did, combined with the economic development that has occurred during that intervening period between 2012 and now, has taken all the pressure off of any near-term need to raise the ad valorem tax, and it puts the district on a self-sustaining path for the foreseeable future. So that is indeed good news for the county. So, Madam Chair, the budget surplus and the $12 million in savings is all the good news I have to share. So I'll yield back the rest of my time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Peterson. Really appreciate it. That's really super good news for the county. All right, next order of business is a request to postpone agenda items, additions, deletions, or changes in the order of presentation. Board, do we have any? Mr. Stamey, nothing? Okay. All right, then nothing happened there. The next item of business is the citizen comment period. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Give us your name and your address. And if you can, please keep your comments to approximately 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Ann Casey, and most of you know me. For the last 15 years, I have lived, sweat, breathed, and focused on Goochland Casa. And because of your support over the last 15 years, we are a very important part of the county, and I just wanted to let you know that I am retiring, and I wanted you to meet my replacement. She is well-known in Goochland. She knows us a little bit because she was on the FAP team for about, how many years? 15 years? And so she knows people in Goochland. And I'll just let her say a few minutes, but I just want you guys to know that I just love this county, and I've loved working with everybody that I have been connected with CASA, including social services, including the police, including the sheriff's office, including the court system. And I feel very lucky. I know I lost my husband a year ago, and I'm still going to stay in Goochland because this is my home. And I just want you guys to know that you have an unbelievable county. Anyway, this is Melinda Tiffany.
Good afternoon. My name is Melinda Tiffany. As she said, I worked at Elk Hill for about 14 years. Prior to that, I worked at the Department of Corrections. Since then, I've worked a couple other jobs over in Cumberland, and I have a private practice in Powhatan. But I am excited to be back in Goochland and to see a lot of familiar faces and to see a lot of good changes going on here, and I look forward to being part of the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Casey, before you leave. I just wanted, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of the county, to present you this letter of appreciation for all that you have done. It seems like a small thing for all the hours that you have put in and all, the faithful service you've given us, but just it's a small thing to let you know that we really do appreciate everything that you have done.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you. I loved every minute of it.
Okay, well, good, and you were good at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kate Sarfati, and I live at 2209 Craig Run Court in Maidens. I'd like to offer a few remarks on behalf of Ann Casey. Since 2011, I've had the honor of working with Ann Casey as a member of the Goochland County Court-appointed Special Advocates Board of Directors. Ann was in the first class of CASAs trained in Goochland and was sworn in 2005. She was asked to become the executive director in 2010. This was a position she was highly qualified for and one which she has devoted herself to in an extraordinary fashion. She has done an amazing job of growing the Goochland program and increasing its visibility and recognition within the community. In 2010, there were 8 CASAs and that number more than doubled over Ann's first training class, which was sworn in 2011. There are currently 24 Goochland CASAs, and there are 4 people awaiting the next training class. During Judge Berry's tenure in Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court, CASA averaged 50 to 55 cases per year. And now with Judge Tinsley on the bench, we're currently averaging 30 to 35 cases per year. Ann has dedicated herself to promoting advocacy for the children of Goochland County who find themselves subjects of juvenile court proceedings through no fault of their own. She has truly been a voice for the children, and we have been very fortunate to have had her commitment to Goochland CASA these past 15 years.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comments at this point? Okay.
Good afternoon to the board. I'm Wendy Hobbs. I live at 3055 Trampy Crossway. I'm also the president of the Goochland NAACP. And I want to say, Madam Chairman, thank you for your statement during the comment period. It is appreciated. I look forward to working with the committee that is being formed and moving this in a positive direction.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Is there anyone? Oh. Yep, seeing none.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Jonathan Lyle, 1521 Mannequin Road. I'm also one of the directors for the Monacan Soil and Water Conservation District. And on agricultural topics, I do want to bring to the board's attention, you may already know, but this is National Farmers Market Week, August 2nd through the 8th. We're blessed here in Goochland to have several rather robust farmers market. And I hate the term, these uncertain, unusual times, but agricultural is still, and I hope will continue to be, an integral part of the county. And the farmers markets are a good place to see exactly what our local ag community is producing to everybody's benefit. I also want to mention that there was a degree of uncertainty, but as of last week, I was told that the well water testing program will be conducted this year. And September 21st is the date that Virginia Tech, the Extension Service, has provided us. There is a wrinkle, of course, because in these unusual times, we now will be sharing that date with 4 counties instead of just Powhatan and Goochland. Hanover, Henrico, Powhatan, and Goochland will all have their testing samples assembled on that day. Virginia Tech has a 215 sampling limit per day, so you can do the math. Mr. Peterson can help us if we need help. Divide 215 by 4, and you can see instead of potentially 100 samples for Goochland, we will be just north of 50. So I have been reaching out to members of the community to see how we can get more people who might otherwise not be participating to participate, whether through grants or just better education as to why it's important to test your well water. I also want to bring to the board's attention a deep appreciation the Monacan board has for the commitment you've shown by having a liaison. As you probably are aware, Debbie Bird will be retiring and will no longer be our liaison, and we will miss her sorely. She has been very faithful, very consistent in participating, giving guidance to how we might better interact and interface with the county. She's also taken one for the team because at our meetings, I'm allowed to speak for longer than 3 minutes. So, yeah. So, I heard that. I'm ignoring it, but I heard it. So my point is, thank you very much. And our understanding is we will continue to have a designated liaison, and I appreciate that very much. Finally, if I'm not over 3 minutes, I was very much intrigued at how silviculture and agriculture terms were somewhat mystifying to some members of the board. So I thought perhaps every month I might bring a term to the board as to what
Worth a
is
day.
going on in agriculture. For example, farm. Do people know what a farm is? Well, the USDA has a very specific definition, which is a tract of land cultivated for the purpose of agricultural products. It is classified as having $1,000 or more of agricultural products being produced and sold. A small farm is less than 179 acres and less than $50,000 in gross revenues. So if somebody says, well, we need to protect our farms, we're talking about people that are generating $1,000 of agriculture product. Pick your own berry farms. I guess you might say free-range chickens. People may go into the chicken industry themselves. I don't know. But farm is not the Midwest, 50,000 acres or 5,000 acres of soybeans or corn. It is a lot of what goes on here in Goochland. So when you hear us talk about the ag community and farms, we're talking less than 180 acres and less than $50,000 in gross income. So that support is appreciated from this board, and I know Monacan Soil also appreciates the support you show us. And if I'm not over, the light's not going off, so. Oh. I mean, I am colorblind, but I don't see any light blinking. And those of you who may not get the County Farm Bureau, our new agricultural and natural resources agent, Nicole Schumann, got a nice profiling right up there. So if you're not getting this, I'd be happy to get you on the mailing list. But it was a nice profile of Nicole. Okay. So I'm over time, though I was watching.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lau. Is there anyone else? All right, we'll close the citizen comment period, and I'm going to circle back, and I managed to skip the chair comments. The county administrator comments. So, Mr. Stamey, I'm so sorry.
That's okay, Madam Chair. If I can give a quick update, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll just roll right into it. No update would be complete without an update on our COVID-19 situation. And as it relates to COVID-19 right now, there are no significant updates as it relates to the county's transitional operations plan. As you may recall, we entered Phase 3 back on July 1st, and we remain in Phase 3 and will until otherwise directed by the governor's office. If you do have questions or concerns or just want to look into the current COVID-related statistics for our area or for the Commonwealth of Virginia or even for the country for that matter, you can go to our main webpage, click on the upper right-hand corner, and within a couple of clicks you can access the Virginia Department of Health's information website as well as the CDC. As far as our storm over the overnight hours and into this morning, I believe Goochland really dodged a major bullet as it pertains to storm damage. We were extremely lucky. A lot of our neighbors to the east of us and the east of 95 saw a much more significant impact to their communities and to their operations from a government standpoint. This morning, Dominion reported approximately 500 residents without power in Goochland County, and as of 1 p.m., we were down to 14. So we've seen a lot of improvement as it relates to our services from Dominion. Public safety did have a steady morning this morning. Mr. Ferguson's going to touch on some of their activities a little bit later on your agenda, but we did have to fight through a number of downed trees and some minor flooding in spots, as well as a couple of vehicular accidents along I-64 and Broad Street. We did not have any reported building or facility infrastructure issues as it relates to county facilities and opened on time this morning. Renovations for the 522 wing of the building just outside to the left here are underway, and work is moving along right on schedule. And within the next few weeks, we hope to relocate the treasurer's office to what we call the southern portion of the building and allow for the northern portion to receive that phased effort in their renovations. We'll be communicating all these changes to the public to keep everyone informed. And finally, the Census 2020 is still ongoing, and we encourage all of our residents to respond by October 31st, 2020. And as a reminder, you can respond via online, by phone, or by a paper survey. Those are all the comments I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stamey. Really appreciate that, and I apologize again to you. The next item on our agenda is minutes approval. We have meeting minutes from our June 2nd and June 10th meeting. I'm assuming everyone has read the meeting minutes. If there are no questions, may I have a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I do have actually one very small correction. It was just a matter of, you know what it is? Oh, you were nodding your head. If I could find it again. It's on page 10 of our board packet. I was talking about looting and rioting, my comments, and it says polluting. Okay, it's a little just a couple extra letters in there. So we have a motion and we have a second with that correction. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you, gentlemen. So now we begin our report section. First item is VDOT. Do we have someone from VDOT here today? If we don't, we do have the report that is in our board packet. They have been quite busy with mowing and other activities. If we have any questions, if anyone has any questions for VDOT, we most certainly can get them to them. All right, next item is fire rescue. Chief Ferguson is here. Welcome, Chief.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to give a brief report on fire rescue. And certainly, we've been out on the road all morning, and I know VDOT's out there too, so I know they're busy with removing trees and so forth. I know you have the fire rescue report in your packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about it. I do have a few brief comments to share, a little bit of information to share with you on the tropical storm-related activity regarding public safety. The county was prepared as the EOC was already open virtually for the COVID-19 pandemic. We were in a good position should anything have occurred in a major way, but we did put everybody on high alert, and we were ready for whatever could have happened. As far as public safety goes, we did have one house fire yesterday afternoon in the western end of the county. It was a house struck by lightning during one of the thunderstorms. We had a generator that caught fire this morning next to a home in the Mannequin area. Luckily, that fire was extinguished upon our arrival. One citizen in the county suffered major flooding in their basement over off of Broad Street. So this morning we spent a while helping with water removal from the citizen's basement. There were 7 traffic-related accidents, 2 of which were no injuries, and the other 5 we did have some injuries associated with. One wires arcing call. There were 13 trees down across the county, and some of which also involved power lines were entangled in. Mr. Stamey had already reported out on the power outages, and that's a moving target. It changes by the minute, and so I know Dominion and Central Virginia and Rappahannock are doing all they can do to keep our residents in power, and we'll be checking that again at the conclusion of this meeting. The other thing I'll tell you is, in addition to the preparedness and so forth, the emergency management that we continue to do for the COVID-19, we are seeing our call volume pick back up and return to normal levels. In fact, it might be slightly increased as to where it was last year during the month of June and July. So from that standpoint, I think some things in the community are returning to normal levels, call volume being one of those, and we are certainly sorry to see people need fire and EMS, but people want people to know that they can call us if there's a need, and we're prepared to help them. Response times are still holding and trending down, as they have been since last October when we staffed the fire stations with career personnel 24/7 in conjunction with their volunteers. And I wanted to let you know that we have made 3 conditional job offers to the positions that you granted us. Thank you very much. That were effective July 1st, and we hope to bring those 3 new firefighters on board on August the 17th. We were also able to promote 2 new lieutenants, and that gives us a station officer, a career station officer at each of our 6 fire rescue stations, so we really appreciate that. I'd like to also just mention that we've made great progress with our dry hydrants. We had presented for a while that our dry hydrants had been in service for many years, and there were miscellaneous repairs needed with each of them. 42 repairs have been completed to date. That required a vendor to get in the water and make those repairs. In some cases, a diver went down and made repairs to the strainers and so forth on the pipes in the ponds. and we have 10 more that are undergoing repairs right now. So good progress is made on that. I'd like to recognize Training and Health and Safety Officer Chan Rowland, who's been spearheading that project with us. In closing, I would just like to recognize all the volunteer and career members who compose the Fire Rescue Department, including their dispatchers, their sheriff deputies, all public safety, for their dedication, skill, and the excellent work that they do on a daily basis. It's a true honor to serve as part of the team. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you guys have any.
Any questions for Chief Ferguson at this point? We just thank you. It's so comforting to know that we have such caring and competent folks there when we need you. So
Well,
thank you.
We thank you too, and we couldn't do it without your support, so thank you
I'm
very
sorry.
much.
No,
Oh,
that's
Mr.
just
Peterson.
morning.
Yes,
Chief,
sir.
real quick, I
Right.
read through your report, and
Yes,
you're
sir.
you're busy as usual, and thank you for all you do. You mentioned call volume is starting to return to normal. One of the other things I noticed in there that seemed like it was returning to normal, but I wanted to just check with you, is training. Because
Yes.
it's a little hard to do non-contact training, and is in-person training where it needs to be in this crisis?
So we're getting back to that point. Deputy Chief Watkins and their training officers have been working hard to be creative while trying to follow the COVID guidelines and maintaining social distancing to have in-person training. And we were able to do EMS training recently. And on July the 18th, the Department of Fire Programs actually opened up in-person training across the state, and Goochland was the first jurisdiction to actually host a heavy and tactical rescue class. We hosted that Company 3, where we had not only our members, but other members from across the state attended. So yes, sir, we are trying to get training back to normal. You honestly get to a point in our business, the risk associated with the work we do, you have to weigh the risk-benefit, and you have to sometimes go back to some things you were doing previously so that you can stay safe to address the other hazards we see.
Right, so the 3 new people to be onboarded, their training will.
Yes, sir. We
progress as
actually
well.
have
Okay.
a 6-week orientation program that's orientation and also training for them. It's on schedule, and it will be the normal delivery that we do while following some of the guidelines. Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question.
All right, thank you, Ms. Pierce. Anyone else? No one else? Leave anyone out? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you. Okay. Next item would be new county staff, but we have none, so there's that report. We have the planning and development activity report and the accounts payable report are in the packet. Are there any questions or comments about those 2 reports? All right, seeing none, that's for your reading pleasure. The next item is consent agenda. Mr. Stamey, you'd like to walk us through that?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, we have 7 items for the board's consideration as part of the consent agenda for this afternoon. Your first item is a request to approve an amended contract between the Goochland-Powhatan Community Services Board and the Virginia Department of Behavioral Services for fiscal years 20 and 21. The revision would extend the current contract through December 31st, 2020. Components of the amendments can be found on page 61 of your packet. Per state law, the local governing body is required to approve the performance agreement in order for the Community Service Board to receive its state funding. The next 2 items on your consent agenda are requests to set public hearings to consider ordinance amendments to remove 2 parcels from the Tuckahoe Creek Service District. Parcels can be considered for removal if parcels of equal or greater assessed value have entered the district in the past 2 years, as well as meet the criteria to be considered for that removal. Both of these parcels do meet that criteria, and if approved, the public hearings will be on your September 1st agenda. Your next item is a request to set a public hearing related to an ordinance amendment to establish a satellite voting office for the general registrar. No excuse absentee voting is now allowed in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we are anticipating that absentee voting turnout will be high, given the fact that Goochland typically has one of the higher voting turnout percentages in the state, as well as the fact that it's a presidential election this November, and the ongoing pandemic and the issues associated with that. We are expecting the need to establish this satellite voting location. The location we have in mind is actually next door to the new registrar space. We'd be utilizing the Parks and Recreation gym for that purpose. We don't anticipate any impact to the operations of the Parks and Rec building, and the facility does meet all of the state law requirements to serve as a voter satellite office. The 5th item for consideration is a request to authorize the interim county administrator to execute a 2nd amendment to the existing Department of Corrections wastewater agreement. The Department of Corrections has agreed to increase the wastewater treatment allocation to the county in an effort to help satisfy our future wastewater demands within the courthouse area. And this allocation increase will require upgrades to the DOC facilities as part of the amended agreement, and we would have to convey funds to allow the necessary improvements of the system. Once these phased improvements are completed, staff will come back to the board and seek an update on the sewage treatment services contract. The next item is a request to authorize the interim county administrator to execute an amendment to the performance agreement between Licking Hole Creek Craft Brewery, the Goochland County Economic Development Authority, and Goochland County. In August of 2017, the board approved the Governor's Agriculture and Forestry Industries Development Fund Performance and Local Incentives Agreement, which formalized an incentive offered to Licking Hole Creek Craft Brewery. The incentive established benchmarks for multiple areas of performance, and it is not anticipated that the performance date of August 31st, 2020 will be met. The amendment will extend the performance date through November 30th, 2021, as well as require progress reports up until that date as well from Licking Hole. The last item for consideration is a request to consider a resolution requesting VDOT to add roads in Reeders Branch Section 1 into the state system for maintenance. At this time, construction of the roads are complete, and VDOT has notified the county that roads are ready for acceptance into the secondary system. Streets identified for acceptance can be found in your agenda packet. All contracts and amendments found on your consent agenda have been reviewed and approved to form by the county attorney, and staff and myself are available to address any questions you may have as part of your consent agenda.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Stamey. Board, any questions on any of the consent items?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent items as presented.
Okay, we have a motion, have a second?
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. If there are no further questions, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, okay. All right, now we're into the new business section. The first is the 2020 year-end fund balance projection and fund balance assignments. Ms. Horlacker, there you go.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Barbara Horlacker, and I'm the Director of Financial Services. And this afternoon, we're going to talk about the fund balance assignments. Normally, we bring this to you at this time of the year once we have some projected results. No. FY20 preliminary projected results, not the final results, but a good idea of what they are. And we ask for the various assignments because there's various projects that we would like to get started on in FY21. The results for this year thus far, revenues are, real estate revenues are running about $1 million over budget. Personal property is also, I believe, $1.2 million over budget. The building permits ended slightly over budget. Oh, use that. Oh, okay, here we go. Real estate, $1.2 million over budget. Personal property, $1.3 million over budget. Sales tax, we only have 11 months worth, and we're already slightly over budget on the sales tax, so we will end up over budget there as well. And building permits will ended slightly above budget. The only major, when I say major, a large revenue that is under budget is the interest on bank deposits. Interest rates went way down when the pandemic started, and so we will end up with about $840,000 in interest money this year. The total revenues will be approximately $60.5 million, which is almost $3 million over budget. Expenditures are expected to come in $2.3 million under budget, which would give us an operating surplus of $5.4 million. And this is after we anticipated that there would be large problems this year. So those problems have not come to fruition, luckily, and we actually ended the year with very good results. Leaves us with an ending fund balance of $34.5 million, a decrease of about $971,000 over the previous year. Our unassigned fund balance will end at about $18.8 million, and our assigned fund balance at $12.9 million. The revenue stabilization will remain at 3% per policy, and our unassigned fund balance will be at approximately 30%, which is 5% over our target. And the debt expenditures will be about 5.6%, and that is below our target, well below our target of 10%. So at this time of the year, like I said, we talk about these assignments with these surpluses. We try to, these are one-time monies. We try to prioritize and decide where we want to set those monies aside. Once you make an assignment, there's flexibility in there. It still can be assigned to another need as time goes on or as needs are identified. It's not until the money is actually appropriated where you're then giving us permission to spend that money. I've highlighted the ones that have changed from the previous years. Some of them carry over from year to year. And the ones that have changed are the debt service reserve for the school debt. This is debt that we anticipate issuing in the next year or two. And of course, once we issue debt, we will have the debt service from that. We have plans to try to keep our debt service in the county at about $3.9 million. And we're going through several years now where we paid off some debt. And so even though we're budgeting $3.9 million, we don't have that much debt service. Our plan was to set aside $350,000 this year. And then the plan was to set aside another $2 million in FY21. But because of the budget cuts to FY21, we weren't going to be able to keep up with that schedule. However, since we have surplus this year, we do have the ability to go ahead and set aside that $2 million. So we would end up with a reserve of $2.8 million, which was our plan to be at the end of FY21. I think that is prudent use of the fund balance assignment. There's $50,000 assigned to the broadband plan. This is money that was put in the county administrator's budget and it was never spent. So we're putting it back in the assignment to say, hey, when we need it to pull it forward for an appropriation, we have it there. Right now, there's $300,000 assigned to schools turn back, and that's just a plug figure. They're going to come back to us probably in the next month or two, and they anticipate they will have had more than $300,000 in savings at not having school from March through May. We asked them to, the practice in the past has been they turn back money, we return it to them the following year, and they are able to do it on use it for some one-time things. And we asked them to turn back $150,000 at a minimum that we would retain, but they believe that it will be closer to $500,000 or $600,000 that they will return back. And then at that point, we'll discuss what it is their plans are for those funds. $2.5 million is assigned to future CIP projects. That is just a way of categorizing that fund balance. It's assigned, it's not spent. Should we see some further need in FY21 to restore more items to the CIP? If not, we will use that money to cash fund some more things in FY22. The only two items that we're going to ask you to appropriate, and that will be tonight at the public hearing, are $960,000 to the FY21 CIP. Those are projects that were originally in the proposed FY21 CIP. And now with these results of FY20 being the surplus that we have, we're looking back at that and saying, what needs do we still have in FY21 that aren't met by the original reduced CIP? And we will go over those items after this discussion. And the last item is $50,000 that was the planning department had in excess this year that they did not spend on some of their projects that they were able to do in-house. And they would like to take that savings that they had this year and transfer it to their software project to build some contingency into their CD software project. And right now they have a budget and they're getting started on that project, but it doesn't have any contingency in it. So those are the new assignments for this year. So are there any questions on these assignments?
Mr. Lumpkins?
Yep. And I might ask you to back, I have a couple questions on what you've presented so far.
Sure.
And I came in later on the audit committee meeting and I had a few questions from there, but I think you answered a lot there, but maybe there's some things that would be good to revisit. Could you go back 2 slides?
Mm-hmm. I think I can. There we go.
Did not revise.
We did not revise other than, normal things through the
Right.
year.
So the good news is we met all these improvements
Correct.
on the original budget long before, done over a year ago.
Yes.
Right, excellent, okay. So I just have a couple of questions on the philosophy of, and you can jump back to where you were on us, and you have new, in the packet, page 175, page 32 of the audit, everything that's a grade in is new, is that new assignments?
Correct.
So later.
New or changed, I should say.
Okay, new or changed. So everything else that's not highlighted is already in place. And so when we get later in this presentation to asking for an action item, we're just going to be dealing with new assignments or changes. That's what you're asking, right?
I'm asking to approve the whole list, the entire list.
Okay,
Of
so
read.
we'll approve the whole list, but really all that's changing.
But all
is-
that's changed are those
or
highlighted items,
is added
correct?
or changed is what's highlighted.
Correct.
Okay. So when you get down to the FY21 CIP amendments in the CD software where you put /appropriate, assigned/appropriate.
Right.
My question is, maybe I've thought of 2 ways to ask it, but trying to find out what's the philosophy of you moving something to appropriate? Is that the month you're getting ready to ask us to appropriate it, or?
Absolutely. And that's just to give you a little more information. Like I said in the beginning, once you assign it, it's flexible. You decide we have another need, we're going to switch it to. Once you appropriate it, you're putting it into the budget and you're saying, yeah, it's okay to spend it. So
But in my view, when you ask us to assign something, I'm figuring, and we all reached the agreements to assign these things, I figure we're pretty much sure that unless something changes in the future that we don't anticipate, we're going to appropriate it. I mean, our intention is by assigning it, we're planning on eventually appropriating it, right?
right. But
So-
in
so
the
you-
past, people like clarification between the two so that, I don't know,
So the only reason you put the /appropriate on this report is because you're asking us to, today or next month, to appropriate it. right?
absolutely, tonight,
All right.
yes.
Okay, so then that leads me back to sort of another, as I'm trying to educate myself and learn, is there kind of a philosophy or an approach to when does something move from unassigned to assigned?
From unassigned to assigned? Actually, we haven't moved anything. I mean, unassigned, we are keeping as that safety bucket, that safety amount. And where we're getting the assignments from is the surplus of the year. So that assigned amount unassigned amount was there from previous years. It's always been 18 million Well, it has been in the last couple of years. We added a little bit to it this year, 200,000, I believe, to it. And-
So we have been, at least in recent years, we've been taking all surpluses and they're going right into the assigned bucket?
Yes, yes. I mean, more or less, we've added a little bit to the assigned each year, unassigned each year.
Unassigned.
So real quickly on the newer change, 2.8 million for the reserve for future school debt. Explain how that fits into the plans to finance the schools or to pay for the new elementary school.
Right. So what we feel is affordable at our current tax rate is a debt service of about $3.9 million. That is, when I say affordable, we can budget for that each year, and hopefully still have room for adding public safety, things like that. So in order to keep that at a level, at that level, even though if we issue, and it all depends on interest rates, and this is all kind of crystal ball stuff and forecasting. If we issue $50-some million in debt, the debt service on that, along with our existing debt service, would bring us up to about the 4.1, 4.2 level. We don't think that's
all
quite.
outside of utilities, that's in the general.
Right, separate from utilities. We don't feel that's at our comfort level, so how do we deal with that? So one way we deal with that is to set the money aside ahead of time, so when we get to that point where our debt service is 4.2, 4.3, we can use regular recurring money for the 3.9 of it, and then we can pull a little bit from this reserve to make that debt service each year, still keeping us at that comfort level where we can keep the tax rate at 53 cents for the county. So it's kind of like saving ahead for future.
Big ticket item, yeah.
So on that item, and this I think helps me understand your earlier question, why you're asking us to approve the whole thing. That 2.8 is now the new balance. That's not in addition to that particular bucket.
Correct.
That's
It's
the new
the-
total
it's
balance.
the
So
new
that's
total
all we
balance.
have in the reserve for.
Right. We started the year at, I think I said 468,000, and we would end the year at $2.8 million. So a big increase puts us a long way towards building up that reserve.
So a decent chunk of our surplus this year is going to this.
Yes.
To this item.
Yes.
All right. And the future CIP projects, do you have a breakdown of, and we don't need to go into it today at all, but if I wanted to look at it later, could I see where the
It's in our
2.5?
The
This
future
evening.
CIP projects?
What projects it goes to?
That's the future.
But is there a project table?
At this point, no, there's not.
So how
There's,
do you
there's
arrive at-
anything that, how did I derive at that? That
How'd
was
you
what
arrive?
was left over after all these others. So that is a true plug figure. What we've been able to do sometimes in the past is we've actually been able to set aside 2 years' worth of the cash for the CIP, the cash that we've spent. This year being so different with the whole cutting it and now bringing it back up, this could either be for some of those projects that were cut that now rise to the level of we really need to do them, or we could just keep it sitting here, and then when we get to FY22, we say, oh, we already have the cash to fund the cash portion of the CIP. So there are no projects
No projects
designed
are
for that,
earmarked around
no,
this, okay.
nothing earmarked for that. It's just,
Madam Chair, can I jump in? 'Cause I think you're asking a similar question that I asked in the committee meeting, which was, I had this picture that there was another list somewhere of projects that we haven't assigned yet, or that are just waiting to, they're sort of on deck. But that's not the case. All the projects we're looking at are on this list, so there's not anything in reserves right now.
that's correct. And this is what a favorable position we're in, that we can just assign money
To
that
things that we don't even really know what.
we don't have a use
So
intended.
this goes back to my sort of philosophical question about why not the unassigned bucket? why not build that unassigned bucket up? Because we have a threshold, the county's unassigned balance shall be at least 20% with a target of 25. Because I heard you say in meeting, Mr. Peterson, that the credit rating folks, they look at assigned and unassigned. And I gathered from what you said, they don't distinguish that if we have,
Well, they consider it available because assigned can be
It is
reassigned.
available.
it is available. So there's no reason from the credit ratings agency purposes to put it in one or the other. So I'm trying to get to why do we back into that figure versus letting some of that fall into unassigned?
Well, if I could jump in, Madam Chair. I think what you're touching on is there's a lot of birds in the nest all cheeping for a worm. You know, they all want some of the worm. The capital CIP, if you want to know the future CIP expenditures in any kind of detail, we've got a 25-year plan that has every penny and every year, and it's all laid out. The timing is perhaps uncertain, and the priorities tend to shift, and so that's why we don't get too locked into any particular project going forward. But just to put big numbers to it, I think our CIP for FY21 prior to the, pre-COVID was more like $5 million plus or minus. We then took that down quite a bit, down to about $1.5 million or so. So
Right.
3.5 are kind of circling the airport waiting to land. And so what this says is we've got a couple of $1 million we can put towards some of those projects. And as the priorities gel and as the timing looks more clear, we can start to use this as pay-go money to pay as you go on some of those capital programs going forward. Does that help?
It does. So you're saying, although you said it's truly a plug figure, maybe it's sort of tied to the 5-year goal?
what's left.
It's maybe a contribution toward the deferred items from this year and or any other future items that are on that 25-year CIP. It's not sufficient by itself to even pay all of the CIP projects that we had planned to do in 21, but it's a start and it's some monies that are available. So in some respects, it's a plug, but it's a contribution toward a number that we hope to get back to at some point to get us back on track for the CIP. Is that?
Yes.
Thank you all.
Sure.
That, very, very helpful.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? Sharp, you good? Commissioner Spoonhour? Okay. So we need a motion to approve the fiscal year 2020 fund balance assignments.
Well,
Is that correct?
all the assignments and everything on here, right?
Correct.
The assignments.
The
yes.
The,
entire-
the
yes.
appropriations are not being approved today.
Right.
Just the
The
assignments.
Only
assignments.
The
as the
assignments as
chair
presented
said.
on page 175 of the packet, I move that be the case.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any further questions? All right. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, Ms. Horlacher, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And we will have a public hearing tonight to consider those amendments.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And thanks to all the staff who worked on this. It's been, I know it's been tough. Okay, our next item is presentation adoption of the updated master utility plan, the UMP. Mr. Longshore?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Matt Longshore, Director of Public Utilities, and this afternoon I will be presenting our updated utility master plan. And before I get started, just wanted to introduce Richard Kinchelow, sitting right here behind me in the audience. Richard's with Dewberry Engineers, and Richard was key in leading a team of engineers over at Dewberry into actually completing the master plan, updating the models, system, improvements, et cetera. I'm going to be doing the presentation, but Richard will be available after the presentation for questions. First off, I'd like to start with some quick background information, and then I'm going to move into the updated 2020 master plan. The way this presentation is formatted, I'm going to discuss the water system updates as well as the recommended upgrades for that, and then move on into the sewer system. I'll be discussing the demand projections, updated system improvements, and the anticipated cost that goes with those system improvements. Then I'll move into some additions to the updated master plan. Those will be an additional section on rehab and renewal, more commonly referred to as R&R in our industry, as well as the addition of a gravity sewer capacity map and a sewer drainage map. Then I'll go over a couple quick conclusions, and we'll hop into any questions you may have. As a brief background, the county completed and the board adopted the first ever utility master plan back in 2015. Just to put that into context, in 2015, we had approximately 1,300 utility customers. Currently, we have over 1,800 utility customers. So in that plan, the main things that plan did was it completed complete water and sewer system models of our entire public utility system in the county. We analyzed a whole bunch of data to come up with future system demands. When we came up with those demands, we also came up with system improvements that would be needed to meet those demands. And then we assigned projected cost of those improvements. Some of the improvements that came essentially right out of the 2015 plan and were implemented right away to address water quality issues on the East End were a mixer and a Centerville elevated storage tank, as well as the construction and addition of a chloramine booster station on the East End. We also removed our West Creek tank from service right after the 2015 master plan, and this helped realign some pressure zones and address some water pressure issues on the East End. So starting with the water system and more specifically the Courthouse Village water system, what's changed since 2015 and how are these models updated? A couple things that have changed are we have a couple more customers in the courthouse on the water system, approximately 20 more customers. In the 2020 updated plan, we have 270 customers. For the data set in the 2015 plan, we have 250. So a slight change there. However, over the past 5 years, the Department of Corrections, where we purchase all of our treated water for our system, have undergone some system improvements of their own. Through those improvements, we were able to get quite a large bump in allocation from the Department of Corrections, which is a great thing. We currently have a 1 million gallon per day allocation. Back in 2015, we had 200,000 gallons per day. As far as the infrastructure and the pipeline network, we have 1 more mile of pipe in 2020 than we had modeled in the 2015 plan. A couple things that haven't changed. We still have the same 300,000 gallon elevated water storage tank down on River Road, and we still have 1 interconnection with the Department of Corrections. On the East End water system, a few things that have changed, quite a significant change in the customer base. We have, for the data set used for the updated master plan, we have 1,510 water customers. In 2015, we had 1,041 customers. So again, quite a significant increase in customers, mainly due to residential and some commercial development in the East End. So as far as the water pipeline network, we have approximately 11 more miles of pipeline modeled in the updated master plan. A couple projects I mentioned earlier. The West Creek tank has since been decommissioned since the 2015 master plan, and we have also constructed the addition of the chloramine booster station for that master plan. So on the East End, a couple things that haven't changed. We still have 4 pressure zones. We still have the same water allocation from Henrico County for 5.25 million gallons per day. That goes to the 1 million gallon elevated water storage tank in Centerville. We also have our 10,000 gallon tank at our River Road booster station. We have 2 booster stations, one on Broad Street, one on River Road. We still have 4 interconnections with Henrico County, those being on River Road, Patterson Avenue, Ridgefield Parkway, and again, Broad Street. So when we put all the updated data into the models, the next thing we want to do is update our water usage projections throughout the planning period. And we want to do this on a 5-year basis throughout the end of the planning period, which is 2045, which also matches up to our 25-year CIP. So in order to come up with these usage projections, we need to know where populations were projected to increase in the county, where we were going to see, different types of demand, whether they be residential demand, industrial, commercial, et cetera. So we wanted to pull a lot of different folks with a lot of different expertise into that conversation. So initially, we spoke with the Planning Department, Economic Development. We also looked at the 2035 Comprehensive Plan, as well as the Capital Impact Study. Once we brought all that information together, we analyzed, and when I say we, it was really Richard and his team analyzed and crunched all these numbers and data to see what our usage is projected to look like over the next 25 years. And you can see for the courthouse service area, through the end of the planning period, we're projecting to use 430,000 gallons per day of water usage. For the East End service area, we're projecting to use almost 12.5 million gallons per day by the end of the planning period. So some key takeaways from that are that the courthouse system will not need an allocation upgrade through the end of the planning period, which is a great thing. Another thing is we're now projecting that our existing 300,000 gallon elevated storage tank in the courthouse system will be sufficient through the end of the planning period. For the East End, we're projecting that we will need some allocation upgrades by 2030 and 2045. The good news there is, per our agreement with Henrico County, those upgrades are already built into the agreement. We would just need to enact those upgrades closer to time. A couple projects, a couple system improvements we're recommending over the next 5 to 10 years, worthy of mention. One being in the courthouse area, and that's upgrading the Department of Corrections booster station. This is the booster station to fill the courthouse elevated storage tank. As you can see in the photo there, it doesn't look like your typical booster station. It's more of an underground concrete vault. However, inside that vault is a pumping system that the Department of Corrections uses to fill our tank. We're projecting by the 2025 time step, we will need the ability to fill that tank quicker in order to meet higher demands, and also in order to meet fire flow goals in the courthouse system. So I just wanted to highlight that project because that is creeping up quickly. A project we're recommending, probably perhaps the largest system improvement change that we're recommending in the updated master plan, is the addition of a northeast pressure zone on the east end of the county. This is recommended by the 2030 time step, and the main reason for this recommendation is for redundancy and operational flexibility for anticipated industrial growth in that area. So this project is actually broken down to several smaller projects, and those projects include the addition of a new booster station with a ground storage tank, a new control valve along our Ashland Road water line, as well as a new interconnection with Henrico County. Additionally, it will require a new water line going from the booster station to reach our existing system. The estimated cost of that water line, we're anticipating around $1.1 million. The estimated cost of the booster station and ground storage tank, we're estimating around $5 million. And one more bullet point is, though this is about 10 years out, we're recommending this for the 2030 time step. We are recommending that we open a conversation with Henrico County at some point over the next 5 years to discuss the addition of a fifth interconnection and if any agreement modifications will be needed. Moving over to the sewer side of the master plan, a couple things that have changed in the courthouse system was we have a few more customers in the 2020 updated plan versus the 2015 plan, approximately 21 more customers. We also have another sewer pump station that comes with the addition of the Swans End pump station in the Swans End neighborhood. In 2015, we only had two pump stations, two sewer pump stations in the courthouse system. One big change is our allocation with the DOC again. They did some improvements to the wastewater treatment plant that they own and operate. Through those improvements, we were able to get another 25,000 gallons per day of allocation from them. So we currently have an allocation of 136,000 gallons per day from the Department of Corrections versus in 2015, we had an allocation of 111,000 gallons per day. One thing that hasn't changed is our pipeline network in the courthouse sewer system. We still have 7 miles of sewer pipeline modeled. However, over the next few years, that will change with the addition of the Reed Marsh sewer lines as well as accepting the Swans End sewer lines into the county system. For the East End, the biggest change is the amount of customers we have, again, through development projects. For the data set used for the updated plan, we have 1,246 customers in the updated plan. For the 2015 utility master plan, we had 778 customers. In both plans, we modeled 5 sewer pump stations. However, they're not the same 5 sewer pump stations. You may remember one capital improvement project we completed about 4 or 5 years ago was removing the Rivergate pump station from service. However, around that same time or just after that pump station was taken offline, we took in a pump station in Kinlock, Section 8 into our system. So again, still 5 pump stations, just a different 5. Additionally, in the updated 2020 plan, we have 4 more miles of sewer pipeline for a total of 70 miles of sewer pipe that we maintain. What hasn't changed are our allocations. We still have 690,000 gallons per day sewer allocation from Henrico County. That's specifically for our Lower Tuckahoe pump station. And we still have 5 million gallons per day allocation with the city of Richmond for the Tuckahoe Creek Service District. So again, once all this data was collected, once we spoke with several different departments to figure out where areas of growth were going to be within the service district boundaries, we came up with updated wastewater loading projections. So as you can see on the chart here, in the courthouse system, we're estimating to need approximately 390,000 gallons per day by the end of the planning period. And in the East End, we're planning on needing just over 9 million gallons per day by the end of the planning period in 2045. A couple takeaways from that is in the courthouse system, we still need upgrades in allocation from the Department of Corrections. One of those you actually voted on the consent agenda today to initiate one of those projects to get a significant amount of capacity upgrade from the Department of Corrections. As far as long-term allocation needed in the courthouse area, that's more of a fluid situation, and it's something we'll keep our eye on for the next 5 to 10 years and see how the system builds out more. Again, we're projecting we'll need around 390,000 gallons per day, and the project that's currently underway with the Department of Corrections will get us close to that mark. So for the East End, we will need more treatment capacity from Richmond by a 2035 time step. The good news there is our existing agreement with the city of Richmond allows for this upgrade in capacity, and that will need to be enacted closer to time. As far as projected cost of system upgrades for the water and sewer systems, There were some changes to the existing projects in the 2015 plan. Most of those changes are minor and included things like taking larger projects and breaking them out into different phases. So you will see that in the updated plan, but most of the projects are still the same. However, what we did is we looked at every project, on a cost basis, and we reevaluated that project with up-to-date cost estimating data. So our total anticipated water and sewer project cost for the planning period of 2020 to 2045 in the updated plan is just under $105 million. In contrast, the 2015 plan for that same planning period was $108.9 million. A reason for the reduction, the main reason for the reduction was the removal of some of the projects in the 2015 plan that were outside of the known service areas. One of those projects, for example, was a sewer connection from Powhatan County that over the past 5 years, they've expressed really no interest in pursuing. So we went ahead and removed that from the plan. So again, that's the main reason for the cost reduction. So for some additions to the updated master plan, one of the biggest addition is we added a chapter on renewal and replacement improvements. This is added as chapter 10, and this will serve as a guide in how we address aging infrastructure in the county. So what we did basically is we did a desktop review of all the data we have for our existing infrastructure, and we're really focusing on the date of installation of that infrastructure so we can assign it an age. We did that on the premise of assuming that all the infrastructure in the ground, and that's pipes, manholes, fire hydrants, water lines, et cetera, has a 60-year serviceable lifespan. Once we looked at that, we looked at where's the infrastructure that's going to exceed that 60-year lifespan within the planning period. So through that approach, we identified several water line replacement projects. Those projects are located in the courthouse area, the Lower Tuckahoe neighborhood, and the River Road area, and that's the River Road on the east end. We also identified several sewer projects, either for replacement or renewal. Typically, with gravity sewer, it's a little more cost feasible to pursue renewal projects versus replacement projects, but we estimated the cost both ways because we wanted to see really what options we have and what impact it would make. So the total R&R renewal and replacement cost expected within that planning period up to 2045 is we're anticipating something from $7.2 million to approximately $8 million through the end of the planning period. Another addition to the updated plan is a new gravity sewer capacity map. And what this does is it color codes all the gravity pipes in our systems to kind of index that to show how much available capacity is currently in those pipes. And this will serve as a tool when talking with developers, property owners, homeowners, et cetera, on how to best provide sewer service to their properties or how to best serve a certain project. We also added a sewer drainage map. And again, this will provide as a tool for county staff as well as developers, residents, property owners for also determining the best way to provide sewer service to a certain parcel. And hopefully the intention of a map like this will help eliminate development-driven requests for pump stations by showing which parcels lie within which drainage areas. So a couple quick conclusions. We feel that we've made great strides with support of the board over the past 5 years in implementing the utility master plan. Because of that, in the updated master plan, no emergency projects were identified, which is a great thing. So we were excited to see that. We'll continue to embrace all existing and new recommendations in the updated master plan. And again, we feel we're in great shape moving forward with this plan and being able to handle the utility impacts from development as well as address aging infrastructure. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions you may have. And again, Richard is also available to answer any questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that report. Do we have questions or comments from the board? Mr. Lumpkins?
Matt, that was very good. I had 28 questions before you started, and I got nothing. That was so good. That was so good.
Madam Chair, I would just make a comment. I would definitely say that as running for the board, public utilities was not something that was on my radar. And the morning when Mr. Sharp and I got the tour of the facilities and we're standing under a 1 million gallon tank, it's pretty impressive. And the whole system is really impressive in how it works and the work that you guys go into to making sure that we're looking out far enough and keeping it, it's critically important. And it just, again, just actually was one of my favorite parts of that week, to be honest with you. So thank you guys for that.
Okay, thank you.
I do have
All right, Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, Matt, great presentation. Thank you for that. I know when, a few years back, when we were getting our arms around this whole thing, we had developed a software that allows us to do what-ifs and scenario-based testing and say, if I add 500 home development over here, what happens to the direction of the water flow, the aging of the water, all that. These updated projects that we have now with the additional water lines, additional water tower, all of that, I assume, can be worked into that same software so we can still have that capability of doing what-if scenario-based type testing, is that?
It is. That's exactly right. We took all the development projects as well as capital projects that we've completed over the past 5 years, and we plugged those in the same water and sewer models. So additionally, we took the models we had, and then we added on all those projects to the model so we can still run all those scenarios when it comes to different developments and capacities and whatnot. So
Great, fantastic.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
answer.
I have a question for Mr. Kinsler. I don't want him to come all the way out here and not. The one thing that struck me that I thought maybe, because Matt pointed to you a couple times that you did a lot of the work on the modeling. So I noticed in the water numbers, the first 10 years it climbs, but then the last 15 years it doubles in the east end.
Correct.
And I was just, could you give us, I know it's a lot of detail and data information, can you give us at a high level how it is that from 30 to 45 it doubles?
Sure. So a lot of that is based on coordination with the county's planning department and the projects that they've identified through coordination with the developers in the community. We did have the capital impact study that showed a flatter curve, but based on the feedback and the timing, and there are a number of factors that go in development. Anything more than a few years out is a little questionable anyway.
Right.
But we really tried to listen to the staff. They really are the ones that have their pulse on the development in Goochland County.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good. And this may be one question for both of you. In your slide, the sewer drainage map, you talked about eliminating development-driven requests for pump stations. Is this the first time we've done such a thing? It's slide 21. Yeah. Is this the first time we've done this as part of a plan?
This is, as far as the Goochland County utility plan, this is the first time we've actually put the drainage basins on an actual map. So when we meet with developers and when we meet with property owners and whatnot, we can show where their parcel falls on the map and which drainage basin it's in. So sometimes there may be a sewer line closer to their parcel, but it may not be in the same drainage basin as the parcel. So that's when they would request to build a pump station, which pump stations are obviously needed on a system, but they're also a maintenance and operational burden. So anytime we can get away from a pump station and show a developer how they can actually provide sewer service to that parcel using an all-gravity system, that's what we want to do. That's always our intention.
And so this, when I saw it, I was like, if we haven't done this before, this seems to be pretty valuable.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Great,
Absolutely.
great. Good stuff.
Madam Chair, if I can just follow on one of Mr. Lumpkin's questions. I didn't think of it until he brought it up. That fairly dramatic growth toward the back end, which again, it's years out and it's subject to, it's a fluid situation. I get that. But just my question is, in the model, are you assuming that if you run a main, a sewer main or a water main past an existing development of, say, 200 homes, is the assumption that those 200 homes would then move off of their well and septic and migrate onto the counties, so that some of that growth may be in step function as opposed to just an incremental greenfield, breaking ground on a new home or two here and there. Is that, so in that model, does it assume that existing neighborhoods would tie in or not?
So I'll take the first part of that and let Richard hop in with the modeling aspect. There are several projects that were identified in the plan as existing residential neighborhoods, like what you're talking about. The same thing we're doing with Hickory Haven as far as connecting existing properties to our system. So it wouldn't be new development, but it would be new demands on our system.
Right.
And so we do have those built into the model. Those have been identified as Hickory Haven and the Huguenot Hills area, which are currently in the CIP. So we've, over the past few years, we've systematically gone through the model and looked for areas where we may get new demands on the system. So as far as the modeling aspects, I believe all those are included in the updated models for this plan. And I don't believe there were any other within the known service areas that were identified.
Right, so nothing
Okay.
outside of known neighborhoods that are existing. However, I think, and again, to address the dramatic spike, a lot of that is driven by commercial development, which is difficult to predict. So you've got your steady population increase, but you may have a large uptick in commercial development, which I think is what contributes to that dramatic change. Also, if the neighborhoods weren't identified, the model is set up specifically when you're expanding into new areas, showing the main lines that run through the area. In reality, you're going to have networking that occurs, so you have looping and other redundancy, which will also provide additional capacity when you have one or two homes here and there that want to connect as well. So,
Okay. So I can get the one or two homes, that won't drive the dramatic increase in the out years. But I know, for instance, along River Road East, near the Henrico line, east of the Country Club, there are developments in there that are already hooked up, and there are developments that are not. And some for water, not sewer, some for sewer, not water, and it's kind of a patchwork. And if you ran a main down that road for either one, I just didn't know if your model assumed that as you go by those developments that they'll, that's in those numbers that grow fairly dramatically in the out years, or if it's all net new construction type activity. So, but anyway, it's not worth spending a lot of time on because it's out 15 years from now, and Mr. Lunkins will still be here talking about that.
Oh.
Thank you for that.
Your time's
I'll
up.
yield back.
Any other comments? Okay. Thank you very much. We really appreciate all your hard work on this.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Oh. Oh, yes. Oh, good point. We need a motion to adopt the updated utility master plan.
Madam Chairman, I move that we adopt the new master plan as presented.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Spinell.
Second.
Have a second. A motion and a second. There are no further questions or comments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, okay. There you go. Plan is adopted. All right. Next item on the agenda is appointments. We do have 3 appointments. The first is appointment of Kenneth Collier, effective August 1, 2020, for a 4-year term to the Economic Development Authority. The second is appointment of Ms. Yvette Thomas, effective August 1, 2020, to a 3-year term for the Goochland Powhatan Community Services Board. And the third is reappointment of Taylor Keeney, effective August 1, 2020, for a 2-year term to the Goochland Recreation Advisory Commission. Are any of these new appointees here today? I didn't think so. Okay. So those are the 3 appointments that we have. Can we have a motion to approve, or any comments made about any of these?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make comments regarding the first 2. Is there stepping up from District 2 is representing? Mr. Collier is currently serving on the Board of Equalization and has been working towards getting on the Economic EDA Board for quite some time. He actually went to school for it. He's a small business owner in the county, and I think it would be an excellent addition to the board. He's already started reaching out to Mr. Kilduff and team and some of the current board members. I think he will be an excellent, serve that in an excellent capacity. I had the pleasure to meet Ms. Thomas last week upon receiving her application for the Goochland County Community Services Board. And Ms. Thomas has served her entire life. She, both in the military, is retired military. She has served in the Department of Corrections and on many boards. She's actually a CASA. We heard about, she's one of the 20-some CASAs that are serving the children in our community, and is as excited as I've seen anybody to serve on a board, and I just know that she will be an outstanding addition to that board.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the appointments, the 3 appointments before us, as presented.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Welcome to all 3 of you, and thank you for serving. All right, the next item on the agenda is motion to enter into a closed meeting.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Lumpkins?
I move that in accordance with the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.23711A1, that the Goochland County Board of Supervisors convene in a closed meeting for the purpose of recruitment for the position of county administrator.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Stamey, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins?
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Ms. Laskowlet?
Yes. Okay, so we will adjourn to our closed session. We'll come back after that and certify the closed session, and then our regular meeting, evening public hearings are at 6 p.m. So thank you very much. Yeah, we'll take a break.
Monacan employees said they love their job, but it's not a hobby. They do enjoy the ability to pay their bills. So if there's an opportunity to revisit that budget, to look at the merit raises, as well as further funding the first responders, and I don't even know what to do with schools. I mean, this is such a can of worms there as to what they're having to deal with. But those budgets in January and February seem to be pretty well thought through. If the revenues are coming in as robustly or as adequately as they seem to be, it's a general encouragement that you go back and see what could be done. First responders, staff, and then the schools. My time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Lyle. Appreciate that. Any other citizen comments at this point? Okay. We will close the citizen comment period and begin the public hearings. The first item on the agenda is application by Richard Dane. Ms. Hunter will present the case, and for those who are not familiar, the staff will present the case. The applicant will get an opportunity to speak, answer questions. We'll open the public hearing to the public for comments, and generally come back to staff or the applicant at the end. We'll discuss and vote. So that's sort of the process. The floor is all yours, Ms. Hunter.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Stamey, Joanne Hunter, Director of Community Development. The first public hearing this evening is a CU 2020-08 filed by Richard Dane to operate automotive sales at 2799 Sandy Hook Road. It's centrally located in the county. The comprehensive plan designates the area as rural enhancement area. You'll see the semi-public just to the north a little bit. That's Raglan Church. And then you can see just at the edge of the map, the Sandy Hook Rural Crossroads. This property is zoned A2. Most of the surrounding properties are also zoned A2, but there are some A1 and R1 properties as well. You can see this is the aerial photo. This has been an existing automotive sales site since early in the 60s. This was the building. It was known as Woodson Auto. Mr. Woodson had received a conditional use permit in 1989 to operate automotive sales. With that CUP, it did not have a condition for it to be transferred to a new owner. So that permit was active until recently when the business closed. With all our current CUPs, we always have that transferable condition in it now so that if the property was sold, it could be transferred to a new owner. But they were not doing that in 1989. So the proposed use by Mr. Dane is also for used car sales. He indicated it's probably be a little less intensive than what was there when it was Woodson Auto. There'll be no sale of commercial vehicles. The vehicles will generally be advertised on the internet and shown by appointment. Only minor vehicle repairs would be allowed. This would be things like washing the cars and getting them ready for sale. And the CUP would limit to 20 cars stored on the lot and a few cars inside the building. The conceptual plan shows where the storage of the lots would be. So to the right of the building, there'd be about a 15-car display area. To the left of the building, about 5-car display area. And again, there'd be room for a few cars within the existing building. A virtual community meeting was held back in May. Board member Mr. Poonhauer and commission members Mr. Myers and 2 citizens were on the virtual call. There were questions regarding the limits of the display area and if any service activities would take place, and the 2 citizens who were on the call did support the proposal. At the Planning Commission meeting last month, it was recommended with a vote of 5-0, and no one spoke at the public hearing. So I'll review the conditions with you. 1 allows the use of the vehicle sales. Again, vehicle sales it does not include the large commercial type trucks or equipment or trailers. Vehicle repair is limited to minor repairs, getting it ready for sale. POD, if there's any expansion of the use, they would require a POD. However, a POD waiver would be permitted since they're not making any exterior improvements to the property. There's a conceptual plan that was shown to you in the presentation. No more than 20 vehicles can be displayed. They'd have to meet all of federal, state, and regulations related to vehicle repair, such as disposal of gasoline, batteries, etc. No outside storage of parts or petroleum products or equipment is permitted. If he was going to add lighting to the site, a lighting plan would be required. Signs, we put this condition on all type of used car dealerships that they can't have any attention-getting devices like the banners and whirligigs and floppy men and things like that. The hours of operation are 10 to 5, Monday through Saturday. We're giving this a 5-year permit. The applicant can ask for an extension after that 5-year period. And again, that transfer language that was not included in the 1989 permit is in this one. So if Mr. Dane was to sell the business to somebody else within that 5-year period, he could transfer the permit as long as they have copies of the conditions to the new owner. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board, any questions at this point? Nope. Okay, is the applicant here? Yes, I am. Yes. Absolutely, Mr. Dane, please.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for seeing us again today. It's been an interesting couple of months getting this done. Some of the board have stopped by and seen me over the past few months, and I appreciate that as well. I'd just like to say that I'm looking forward to conducting business in the county of Goochland. My family and I live in Goochland. We live in Manikin-Sabot, and we just want to continue to be good neighbors. It was mentioned that 2 citizens were on the virtual hearing. Those were the Heights that live across the street. They both called in independently, and if anybody was to object to the building, it would be them at the end of the driveway, but they've been good neighbors, and I want to continue to be good neighbors for them. So if anybody has any questions of me, I'd be glad to answer. Otherwise, I certainly look forward to getting my zoning permit so I can submit my package to the Division of Motor Vehicle Board.
Any questions for the applicant at this point? All right, we reserve our right, Mr. Dane, but let's let the public speak and we'll
Absolutely.
come back.
All
Okay,
right,
thank you very
so
much.
much for allowing me to speak.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll open the public hearing on this. Anyone who would like to speak on this application, support or oppose, comments, thoughts, ideas? Anything? Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, no comments from the public. All right, board,
Madam,
any other thing to add, or someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I would like to move that we approve conditional use permit 2020-00005, application by Richard Dane requesting a conditional use permit for automobile sales at 2799 Sandy Hook Road.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Stamey, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Sharp,
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins,
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour,
Yes.
Ms. Laskellette.
Yes. All right, got your permit. Thank you very much. Good luck to you. Okay, so Ms. Hunter, this is a CUP, conditional use permit application for Martin Marietta Materials.
Yes.
Okay,
As you indicated, this is a conditional use permit request. The request is for uses accessory to an existing quarry use. The property is about 83.2 acres, and it's located at 1916 Ashland Road. You can see with the circle, it's located in the northeast quadrant of the county, the Ashland Road corridor, which is our industrial corridor. Here's the comprehensive plan map, which designates the rear portion along Rockville Road as industrial, and then the area along Ashland Road and 64 as flexible, which flexible designation does correspond with any industrial, office, or warehousing type uses. So the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The majority of the property is currently zoned M1, so the rear portions along Rockville Road are already zoned M1. The property that they'll be leasing towards Ashland Road is zoned A2, and a small portion of it is zoned B1. You can see the quarry here. The quarry received approval in 1989. That permit is not being impacted by this. That permit and their conditions will still be in place. So these new areas are having new CUP for the quarry accessory uses. However, no quarry activities such as mining or blasting could take place on any of these new properties. So the picture on your left shows where the existing CUP is, the 1989 CUP for the quarry. And then you can see the new boundaries for Ashland Road. It runs along Ashland Road here. It's about 700 feet back from Ashland Road. And then these areas along Rockville Road. And you may want to continue to look in the back because I'm going to show you a lot of things on the visual. So with the new CUP, they'll be adding accessory uses. What they will be doing is relocating their processing plant and equipment closer to Ashland Road. That's a benefit to the residents along Rockville Road. There's really very limited residential along Ashland Road. However, there are rural residential uses along Rockville Road. They will be creating their overburden stockpiles along the Rockville Road corridor, and there'll be vegetated berms and buffers adjacent to all public roads and abutting properties. And again, as I said, the existing CUP would remain in place and no changes are being requested with this. So the yellow areas is where their current and future processing plan is. So in the yellow here, this is where their existing processing equipment is. This is the Anderson Quarry, and they extract the stone for asphalt and concrete. They would be moving the thing doesn't, I think the laser just doesn't work up there now. They'll be moving it to the yellow area closer to Ashland Road. That's where the new equipment will be, the new processing equipment. The applicant had indicated it would be quieter, more efficient, and more environmentally friendly. And then they'd also be adding a modular office for the employees on Ashland Road. The blue purple color is where the existing quarry is, and then the orange, how that's sort of a sideways L. The top part is their existing overburden storage areas, and then the new areas along Rockville Road would be their new overburden storage areas. There would be two of them. The one to the north over time would eventually be about 80 feet tall, and the one to the south would be about 45 feet tall. So again, you can see this is the overburden stockpile A. This one's going to be eventually about 80 feet tall. That's added to over about a 10-year period. And then this one would be about 45 feet tall, the processing equipment down here, and then the office would be located generally in that square area there. So the screening is important for this type of use. The screening along Ashland Road, the lease area for this CUP is about 700 feet back of Ashland Road. So that does allow for additional or other commercial uses at the Ashland and 64 interchange. They will have a 100-foot buffer along Ashland Road, and in fact, will have a 100-foot buffer around the entire perimeter of the property. They'll also, within that 100-foot buffer, have a landscape berm. That berm would be about 15 feet tall, and then on top of that berm, there'll be trees planted, evergreen trees planted 6 feet high at the time of planting, and they would be staggered 10 feet on center to create a continuous evergreen screen. So now we'll look at the screening along Rockville Road. Again, they'll have that 100-foot buffer around the entire perimeter. The north side would have a 100-foot natural buffer with supplemental plants if needed, but that's a pretty wooded area right now. The Rockville Road would have a 100-foot planted buffer along the roadway, and then the south side would have a natural and planted buffer. The planted buffers on the Rockville side call for a minimum of 6-foot tall evergreen trees, or they have the possibility of doing a 2 to 4 foot berm with a 4-foot tall tree. Plantings to install the overburden stockpile B. That's the one that's to the south. Let me show you that one again. So this is A, and this is B. You can see A already has a pretty heavy screening there, where there's not as much down here. So for the the plantings for the overburden stockpile B will have to be installed by May 31st, 2021. However, they would not be able to begin using that overburden stockpile for 5 years. So that will give some time for the landscaping to come in and provide screening before they start using it for stockpile. The overburden areas must be seeded and remained undisturbed for the majority of the year. So this one was also a virtual community meeting. This was our first one. They were the guinea pigs, but we did work through the process. Staff, the applicant's representatives, Board of Supervisor member Mr. Spoonhauer, and approximately 12 residents were on the call. There were questions and concerns related to an existing cemetery on the property, potential traffic impact to Rockville Road, the view shed from Rockville Road, and the potential for removing an old road. At the Planning Commission meeting, this request was recommended for approval with a 5-0 vote, and no one spoke at the public hearing. However, I will say in the last week, we probably have gotten about 6 or 7 emails. I think the board has gotten all of those with some concerns about this request. I sort of summarized their 4 areas of concerns and just want to review them with you. There were concerns that there was no zoning sign on Rockville Road, and there was questions about, notification and transparency of this request. The property has been posted with a zoning sign on the Ashland Road area since early May. The signs are courtesy. They're not required, but when we do post them, we post them where the access to the site would be. There's no access to Rockville Road in any way, so that's why it was not posted back there. The property owner or its citizens can also check for zoning cases. They're advertised in the Goochland Gazette. We did send out notification letters to 36 property owners. Majority of them are along Rockville Road. We did have 12 citizens participate in a virtual community meeting, so that was a pretty robust community meeting for it to be virtual. And I know Representatives Martin and Marietta did reach out to a number of the residents along Rockville Road as well. Some of the concerns in those emails discussed traffic on Rockville Road. There seemed to be some confusion that there is an existing abandoned road there that there may be access by Martin Marietta. Both the 1989 permit and this permit does restrict access. Martin Marietta cannot use that road for quarry activities. So we believe that issue is addressed. There was a concern about outside debris being brought in from other sites and environmental issues. There is a condition that they cannot bring any outside debris to put in the overburden. And Martin Marietta has indicated that they have not, since this quarry has operated, there have been known environmental violations. And then the last one, which was probably the biggest concern, is the appearance of the stockpile along Rockville Road and that's impact on the rural character and things like that. So I wanted to show you what a typical or what a stockpile, overburden stockpile looks like. I think people think an 80-foot tall dirt mountain, but you do have to realize that this is gradual over time. They add a little bit of dirt each time, and then they have to immediately seed it. The first picture in the upper left-hand corner is a typical overburden pile. It's what it's looked like. This is actually the reclaimed pile that's at the site. This is further back on Rockville Road. Remember that sideways L that I showed you, that top part up there, that's actually what their overburden storage looks like. And that's the view of the overburden from Rockville Road. So we do believe that this does have a rural character and a rural appearance and is consistent with our comprehensive plan. I'll review the conditions with you. Number 1 allows the use. Again, this is only for accessory quarry uses, no mining or blasting on these additional parcels that were being included in this CUP. And then there's the last sentence, there's an existing, another condition that says processing aggregate use is also not permitted along those properties, those 3 properties that are adjacent to Rockville Road. So the only thing that can occur on the Rockville Road portion is those overburden stockpiles. The conceptual plan is a condition. That plan was shown to you in the presentation. The applicant will have to meet all the state and federal regulations. This is regulated by the divisions of mines, minerals, and energy, and they're pretty restrictive, that process that the quarries have to go to get their mining permits. We do ask that they submit a copy to the zoning administrator of their approved permits. They have to meet all state requirements, including off-site materials and trash. This is one of the concerns from one of the letters. Disposal of off-site generated waste materials is not allowed within the area, subject to the state permit. No trash and or debris will be allowed to accumulate on the property. The marking of the permit boundaries, they have to mark clearly where there is the quarry boundary within 100 feet. Roads, and these are all part of the state permit. We're just repeating them in the county permit. They have to have VDOT approval for the access road. That's an existing access road to Ashland Road. No impacts to drainage ways, so that will all be part of their permit, and they'll have to make sure that they meet all the DEQ requirements, Army Corps of Engineers. So that's quite an extensive process that they'll have to meet. Number E gets into the screening, which I reviewed with you in the presentation. So again, there'll be a 100-foot perimeter buffer around the entire site. And then it goes on to explain the plantings and berming that was described to you in the presentation. That's the same thing. Those are the plantings for and screening for the Rockville Road area. Again, showing that that stockpile B cannot, the plantings have to be installed by May 31st, 2021. Prior to any land disturbance permits, land disturbing activities, they have to get their ENS and drainage controls in place. Number G is important because that's also one of the conditions or one of the concerns by the citizens. Upon abandonment of the quarry, the operator shall effectively close or fence all roads, opening and pits where hazardous conditions exist. Topsoil and overburden storage areas. Again, that one is limited to, the one to the north is limited to 80 feet. And again, it shows that no overburden storage in that stockpile B can begin for 5 years while that buffer and plantings start to mature and become in place. A lighting plan would be required if they have exterior lighting. No sign requiring a sign permit shall be visible from Rockville Road. Again, we wanted to keep that area as natural looking as possible. Access, this is the one that I think there was the most confusion over by the citizens. Except for emergency access, no ingress or egress shall be permitted to or from Rockville Road. Access to the property for this use must occur through the current access on Ashland Road. So again, no truck traffic on Rockville Road. They will continue, as always, to be using the Ashland Road entrance. Security fence, 8 feet in height, must be established around the perimeter of the property. No toxic chemicals or hazardous substances can be stored on the property. Operating hours are between 7 and 6, Monday through Saturday. No mining or accessory operations are permitted on Sunday. And then the transfer of lease that was discussed in the last public hearing, which is one of our standard conditions. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, board, at this point. Questions? Okay, so Ms. Hunter, I do have just two.
Okay.
Item 5E2. Wait a minute, hold on. Oh, yeah, okay, that's right. It's on page 5 of your packet. Overburden storage will be seated and remain undisturbed for a majority of the calendar year. So they can continue to add to it part of the year. I'm not sure I understand exactly what that means.
Yes, it's not like a daily occurrence where they dig dirt out of the quarry and move it to the overburden. They have it in the area where they process it. And then, once a year or twice a year, they then bring it over to the overburden storage area. So it's not a daily occurrence. And then whenever they add to it, they would then seed that, and then
again.
And then the rest of it would then stay at the processing plant until they're got enough to move it over.
Okay, that answers that question. The other item, I think it's just a typo. Hold on. Well, now I can't find it. Probably find it again. So I think it's just a simple typo. It doesn't really I don't think change the substance. I'll find it again. Okay. So there are no other questions at this point for Ms. Hunter. Is the applicant here? Okay. I'd like to up to speak. Yes, absolutely. And please give us your name.
As soon as I get out of his way.
May I pull my face mask down? All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Mark Kamek. I'm the general manager for Martin Marietta's Virginia operations, so this is one of the operations that I oversee. Ms. Hunter, thank you for your presentation. She did an incredible job representing our application. As she mentioned, we've been operating this location since 1989 and have been a proud neighbor and member of the community for over 30 years. Our application tonight was developed with a lot of hard work and partnership and feedback from the staff, the county staff, Board of Supervisors, and our neighbors. And we think the result of this is something that's going to benefit all parties. For Martin Marietta, you can see that we're able to replace old, rusty, out-of-date equipment with new, efficient, and better operations. And we're able to do so by moving that operation further away from the residents on Rockville Road, which is the benefit for our neighbors. We're grateful for this opportunity to have engaged with the Board of Supervisors, the staff, and our community. We're looking forward to continuing this partnership with Goochland County and our neighbors. And at this point, we'd welcome any opportunity for us to address some questions that may exist.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, Mr.
Ms.
Kmet,
Spoonhour.
thanks for coming tonight. What's driving the need for this change?
So it's an opportunity for us to improve our operating facility. So where our current plan is now, if we're able to move it further away from the neighbors, we're just seeking this as an opportunity to move it away from the neighbors and then continue operations on our current footprint.
Madam Chair?
No, Mr. Pearson?
Yeah, thank you again for that presentation. Will there be any net new capital investment or jobs created by this?
There will be significant capital investment. It's in the budgetary phases, but it's, I feel fine sharing that number. It's between $15 and $18 million. Jobs will remain the same. We employ 12 people there.
Got it. All right, well, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Again, we reserve our right to call you back up with any other questions. So we'll open the public hearing. Anyone like to speak on this application? Support, opposed to it, comments, questions? 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Hearing none. All right, board. If there are no questions or other comments, someone would like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we accept, trying to find the number, the 2024, that we accept 2024 as presented to us this evening for the Martin Marietta property.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharp. So we have a motion, have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And Ms. Hunter, I did find, it's a simple typo, it doesn't really change. It's item number 6, the last sentence, shall begin. I think it should say within 5 years instead of being within 5 years. It's just, the letters are switched, doesn't change the meaning, so I don't think it needs to be amended. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. No further discussion. Mr. Stamey, roll call vote?
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Ms. Laskellette?
Yes. Okay. You have your CUP approval. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so the next order of business is the public hearing to consider fiscal year 21 budget amendments. I'm sorry. Okay. Bye.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the
Okay.
board.
Thank you, Ms. Horlacher.
My name is Barbara Horlacher. I'm the Director of Financial Services, and this is a public hearing tonight to consider FY '21 budget amendments. And the reason we're having a public hearing on these budget amendments is that the Virginia Code requires that if a locality intends to amend its budget by an amount that exceeds 1% of the total expenditures shown in the currently adopted budget, which would be approximately $850,000 for our currently adopted budget, then you must hold a public hearing and advertise that public hearing, which we have, and tonight's amendments total about $1.7 million. So, I'm going to take my mask off. You can probably hear me better now. And because we made so many budget cuts to the FY21 budget before it was adopted, it could be that several times this year we may have to have public hearings because we may exceed that amount of 1%. So today, I have a list for you of budget amendments that we're suggesting. When we adopted the FY21 budget, we made some severe cuts to the CIP. And then once we learned that there would be surpluses, the operating surpluses this year, we went back and looked at the CIP and see what elements of the original proposed FY21 CIP could be restored, which were the most important and of the highest priority. And so the first, I believe it's 6 items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, 6 items were in the original CIP, but due to concerns about outcomes, we cut those. So tonight we will consider a $95,000 amendment to the CIP from assigned fund, FY20 assigned fund balance for a backhoe at the convenience center. The current backhoe is in a state of where it's costing more to repair it than it would be to purchase a new one. $50,000 in sports complex improvements that would include redoing the bathrooms over there as well as improvements to the floor of the sports complex. The IT replacement cycle is simply that, the new servers, new PCs, laptops, et cetera. It's normally more than $80,000, but IT also receives some CARES money for their replacement cycle. So it's $80,000. $50,000 for a rescue boat. We have normally 3 rescue boats that the fire rescue department operates, and one of those is now permanently damaged. And they have acquired, borrow, or able to borrow one currently from Chesterfield, but we are in need of a 3rd rescue boat. And this was in the FY22 CIP to be replaced, so that would remove it from the consideration in the FY22 CIP. And then an ambulance. This was originally in the FY21 to continue our replacement cycle, and this is very much needed. We currently have at least one ambulance that is basically been taken out of commission and out of usage. So, and then the $385,000 would complete the sheriff's vehicle replacement cycle. We originally reduced the replacement cycle to only 1 vehicle, and this would restore that replacement cycle and also give him some vehicles that he can use for his new deputies. So he would then he could then replace about 8 vehicles. And so those are all items that were originally in the FY21 proposed budget. The $50,000 is general funds that were left over from projects in planning, and that they would like to transfer to their software project in the CIP in order to give them some contingency for that project. The items after that really don't involve county well, it's county funds, but don't involve prior year fund balance. The 49,450 for the Next Generation 911 is a state-funded project, so that does not impact county funds. The 500,000 that we've been setting aside each year, and this will be the fourth year, a cash reserve for construction of a new Goochland Elementary School, that comes from proffer money that we've already collected. So that also would not come from county prior year fund balance. And then the 150,000 is the last of our Part 1 CARES funding appropriation, and that would be money that would be transferred to the EDA in order to have a small grants program, small business grants program. So that would be a total of 150,000, and the source of those funds would be CARES Act funds. And that brings the total supplements, so we're increasing our total budget by $1,709,450. And are there any questions on any of those proposed budget amendments?
Board,
Real
Mr.
quick,
Lumpkins.
Just real quickly, and I meant to ask this earlier when we talked about the general fund, 150,000 for the economic development. You said, and I heard you say it earlier too, that this is the last of the first round. And just to be clear, you mean we've finished appropriating?
We've finished appropriating.
This
We
will
haven't
finish
spent
up-
it all.
This will finish up appropriating
Correct,
that money.
correct.
Could you, it may be available, could you just point me to a link where I can see, is there one-stop document where I can look at all of what we've done?
No, there isn't, but that is an excellent suggestion, and I'll see if we can't get something together to.
Yeah, because particularly if we're looking at, are we looking at another round?
Correct.
So I think let's have that, and if we get the school side as well.
Right, right. So in order, what I'll show is the total $2 million that we received in June and how we've appropriated all of the $2 million,
And I know we
including
did some-
400,000 of it went to the
I
schools.
know we did some to schools, but if you could also get from the schools, the CARES
They're
Act
getting
fund
money too.
that came directly from, if they wouldn't mind providing that. to
They're
us,
additional CARES Act money.
that went, that we did, I mean, I don't know whether, it didn't
Right,
come
right,
through us.
right.
So we can get maybe, like I said, a one-stop document that'll show
Yeah.
us the whole CARES Act, both schools and county.
No, I think that's a great suggestion.
Thank you, that'd be great. That's all, Madam Chair, thank you.
Good suggestion. Any other questions? Mr. Peterson?
Yes, Madam Chair, if you don't mind. Thank you for that presentation. This has been a very busy year for you, Barbara. Between adopting a budget, amending the budget, revising the budget, back again to amend the budget, and as you mentioned, we may be back again to amend it later as well, and the debt refinance. So thank you for all the work you've been doing this year. You've been doing a great job. I think we heard from a citizen, I forget who it was, but somebody earlier on that wanted us to revisit the public safety expenditures and make sure we started to catch up a little bit. And as I look at this, there's a fair amount going to public safety here. And as you mentioned, this may not be the last time we do this. We may reasonably frequently revisit as the monies are available to try and catch up on those expenditures. So thank you for that. And I think we've been through the 385. You mentioned there'll be a total of 8 new vehicles, I guess, for the Sheriff's Department this year. This is 7 incremental, plus the one that was
Plus the
already
one
in
that was
books.
originally in the
And
CIP.
that would get them up to a full complement of vehicles. So, yeah, good, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Spoonhour.
Yes, I would just, again, echo Mr. Peterson's comments, but also want to take a moment to thank the citizens because our revenues came in, and our treasurer as well, for the collections. I mean, our citizens have really stepped up during difficult times. We don't know what the future is going to bring, but it is not lost on us. These are very hard-earned dollars that are, in these times, are very, we're just very grateful for that everybody is stepping up like this, and we just really do appreciate it, and we're doing our best. I'm so grateful that you're busy, because that means that we're looking at this consistently, and I wouldn't mind if every month we're saying, okay, we have this money, this has got to go back, and spend it wisely for the citizens for what we need. So just thank you for that, and thank you to the citizens.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Ms. Horlacher. All right, so let's open the public hearing. This budget amendment.
I'm Wendy Hobbs, 3055 Tranby Crossway. And I just want a point of clarity on the Federal Care Act. Is that related to the COVID money?
Yes.
Okay, so are we giving grants, are we considering giving grants to businesses that were impacted by COVID when we put that 150,000 there? Okay.
Turn your mic.
And my other question is, earlier today, there was $50,000 left, put back into the budget that wasn't used in the last budget cycle, and for IT, for broadband. And I didn't understand why we didn't use it, and then I don't see anything to provide additional funding for broadband. And last night, I was on the school board meeting, and one of the things that the citizens constantly talked about is the lack of broadband throughout the county. And I don't see that being addressed here, so I'd just like to have a point of clarity on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hobbs. Those are great questions. Let's finish the public, comments, if you don't mind, Ms. Horlacker, and then we'll come back and address. Are there any other public comments? Well, I tried not to. Don't make eye contact.
A lot of people try not to do that, but Jonathan Lau, 1521 Mannequin Road. And I was also doing the math, and so about $650,000 is coming from the federal government CARES Act. And I do, again, I want to say, Ms. Horlacker, I wouldn't want your job. First of all, I couldn't do it. And second of all, just the amount of, pushing that rock up the hill and then back down and having to do it again. So thank you. It's again, a labor of love. Have I ever mentioned merit raises for employees? But I am interested in seeing, in Mr. Peterson's comments on the equipment, some of my concerns also on budget amendments would be personnel, because it does take both. I heard the chief say today that the 3 positions that had been funded were filled. And I think the Sheriff's Department could also, I understand that during these uncertain, unprecedented times, have been doing home delivery of prescriptions. So there are all kinds of dynamics going on that more people, and it takes a while to get somebody up to speed in those first responder positions. Once again, I don't see anything here on the schools per se, but that I understand, and I appreciated that we're going to be looking at what CARES has done for the schools, as well as the proffers, which we got to spend the proffers on what they're proffered to us. As I've experienced in some of the earlier meetings, we've got to give the money back if we don't spend it for what it's intended for. So again, I appreciate what you all are doing here. It is dynamic, but it is important too. I think the budget is one of those big key things that the board does. So thank you for that. The red light went off. Bye.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lau. Anyone else like to make any comment? Okay, all right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Ms. Horlacker, there were a couple questions asked, good questions, so if you don't mind.
So the one I recall right off the bat is the 50,000. The 50,000 was assigned for a broadband study, and then put into the county administrator's budget to spend in FY '20. It did not get spent on a broadband study or plan, and so as not to lose sight of that money and not to let it just fall, we put it back and assigned to a broadband plan. At this point, we don't have plans to spend that money, but it is set aside and assigned so that we didn't lose track of that money. We have tried to think of ways to use CARES funds for broadband, but they put restrictions on us in a lot of ways, and that is that the project has to be significant. So you have to get a significant number of users, as well as be completed by December 30th and be addressing the current pandemic. So, and we will be talking to schools. I know schools, especially with the second round of money, if there's some way that we can help them with their, I know a lot of the students are lacking broadband, and that is an issue. So I don't recall the other questions.
Well, I do, but before we do that, so the difference is we were assigning earlier in the day, and now we're appropriating
Correct,
and
correct.
spending the money.
And that money's
And
still
that's-
sitting there,
that's
that
still sitting there.
50,000, it's
Is that, so
assigned to broadband.
the other question has to do with the EDA Small Business Grant, COVID related grants, and I don't know.
Madam Chair, before we go to that one, can I make a comment about the 50,000?
Oh, absolutely.
And Mr. Drumright may be able to keep me honest here, but my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was that there was a study to be done, and we were going to spend $50,000 to determine where the real needs were. And Mr. Stevie and I were very involved in this as we were meeting with citizens in District 2, and a lot of the citizens in District 2 were doing that. During that time, some partnerships have arisen with CVEC and some other organizations that have negated the need for that because the partnership itself is going to be taking care of some of that. So it was one of the times, one of the very few times with broadband that we were very fortuitous in that the partnership aligned so that we didn't have to spend the $50,000. So it wasn't that we weren't moving forward on broadband, it was just that a private partnership came in that helped us do that without having to expend the funds.
That's exactly right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that very much.
And the economic grants.
Right, through the EDA. the
Right.
using COVID
And that,
funds.
I'll let Mr. Kilduff,
Madam-
or is.
Madam Chair, I can
Is there
speak to
any?
this as well.
Mr. Stamey.
The $150,000 from the CARES funding is actually, what we're looking to use that for is for a small business grant through the EDA. And essentially how that would work is small businesses, through a tiered number of employees that are employed through that business, can apply for those funds. And they must provide extensive documentation as to what they expended their funds for, previous funds that they've expended on items to help deal with the COVID situation. So for example, if a restaurant with a small number of employees, say 15 employees, had to spend money on new menus or PPE, plexiglass for their restaurant, they can provide receipts to our economic development coordinators and then be eligible to receive those funds as a reimbursement. And that has to be completed, I believe, by December 1st of this year.
Right. And how are we advertising that?
We're going to push out, if this goes through, we would, if you all approve it, we would push it out through a press release and we would actively advertise it within the community.
Okay, all right. And this is a grant, not a loan?
That is correct.
Okay, so it's not, it have to be repaid. It has to be, you have to show your receipts and
That is
justify
correct.
it.
They have to provide extensive documentation of the
Right.
expenses, and they're only eligible for what they expended. They don't get the actual amount.
Right, but they don't have to pay it back.
Correct. That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
And
that's a
I
good
believe
program.
the vast majority of that money, too, is set aside for truly small business, not large employers.
That is correct. There's a max of 50,000 that can be utilized for businesses, I believe, of up to 150 or less. So if you have three businesses that come in and they meet that match of 50,000, those funds are expended, and the only money that's available is for the very small businesses. We wanted to ensure that we took care of the small businesses that were heavily negatively impacted by COVID.
And I'll pile on. Ms. Hobbs, a lot of us have taken a lot of time looking at this particular program, and I would add to what you've heard is that we've also put in place some protections from somebody double dipping. If they got PPP money or EIDL money, they can't double dip. So we're going to ask for certain certifications to make sure that we really are targeting this and using it as effectively as we believe we can. And that was, among all the things you've heard, I know we're trying to be aware of not letting, or keeping it from being like an opportunity to have your same situation covered twice from different sources.
We don't want Harvard swinging in, getting some more money.
That's right.
I might be, so from the PPP perspective,
Neil, you have to repeat the question. for
I'm sorry.
people that are listening.
The question that was asked from the audience was, how does this align with, because there's a lot of money left in other programs, how are we compensating for that? The PPP specifically is focused typically around salaries, wages, utilities. This is our goal here is to help supplement that with other equipment, like Mr. Stevie said, renting a tent to have people outdoors, things that the other grants are maybe not covering.
Trying. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, so we've, let's see, we've held the public hearing, had discussion. Do we have a motion? A motion on this?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just thought I'd weigh in. There was a comment made about the capital improvement nature of these rather than recurring expenses and hiring in personnel and salaries and that kind of thing. And there was quite a bit of dialogue at our Finance and Audit Committee meeting, which took place just prior to this board meeting, well, prior to this afternoon session. And we met with the county treasurer and all of the folks with vested interest in collecting and taxing the county. And there was some surprise expressed that we finished as strong as we did in 2020, but there was also increased concern about how the rest of 2021 might play out and 2022, and the crux of that being that early on people live off their savings. Once the savings are out, then what do you do? So the concern is near term, we got through it okay in 2020, but where we're going to be at the end of 2021, we're really not certain. That said, we treated the 2021 excess or surplus as more or less a one-time amount, a dollar amount to spend. So we spent it on one time buying a boat, buying an ambulance, buying a sheriff vehicle. And then if we finish 2021 strong and 2022 looks good and we feel like we can start introducing recurring expenses, that's, I think, when we would take a look at salaries and pay increases and those kind of things. So just wanted to address the difference between a one-time versus a recurring. Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Should I second that?
Did you want to make a motion?
I thought you were going to.
I was thinking about it. Madam Chair, I move that we approve the FY21 budget amendments and appropriations as presented.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or discussion? Mr. Stamey, can we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Laskellette?
Yes. Okey doke. So the next item is yours, Mr. Stamey.
Good evening, members of the board, Madam Chair, Derek Stamey, Interim County Administrator, and I have the pleasure of presenting to you the unsolicited proposal related to the Tucker Park pedestrian crossing. Just a quick background on the Tucker Park pedestrian crossing project. The map that you see before you on the right-hand side of the screen is a close-in view of an aerial of Tucker Park there, right at the Maidens Bridge as you cross to the southwest over to Powhatan. And the area we're really discussing is the area that's shaded in blue with the red arrow. And that's the area that includes the area where the construction of the pedestrian crossing would take place. As you may recall, back in September of 2019, the county did move to terminate the original pedestrian crossing contract for convenience. And then subsequently, approximately a month later, we did receive an unsolicited proposal, a Phase 1 proposal for an alternative design build product delivered to us by John K. George and Company. Unsolicited proposals do fall under the guidelines for the PPEA, otherwise known as the Public-Private Educational Facilities and Infrastructure Act of 2002. And it's just as hard to say as it is to read. November of 2019, staff did request that the board to consider the proposal under the PPEA. And since that time, staff has conducted an in-depth review of the Phase 1 proposal and advertised that proposal for 45 days for competing proposals on the project, and we did not receive any. That 45-day window for competing proposals is actually a part of the PPEA process. So we have a myriad of timeframes and ways that we have to advertise an unsolicited proposal to ensure that we follow the procurement process. Staff did request a Phase 2 proposal and received that in January of 2020. And after that Phase 2 proposal, staff did recommend working towards final terms of a contract, which I believe we are very close to tying up from a wordsmithing standpoint. Under state law, a public hearing is required to be held on PPEA proposals at least 30 days prior to entering into a contract for the proposed work. So as part of this process, I'm presenting this to you, and there's no action that's needed tonight. We simply have to have the public hearing 30 days prior to when we will bring this back to you to seek authorization to execute the contract per this procurement process. Quick background on the proposal itself. John K. George and Company was the company that presented this unsolicited proposal. They've been in business for almost 40 years, and they specialize in design, build, marine projects. And you can see the two photographs at the bottom of the screen. Those are actually photographs of the Hopewell Boardwalk, and that was completed about 2 years ago. I've been down there and visited it myself. It's a very nice structure, and our structure is actually, if approved, would mirror what you see in those photographs. It's John K. George is very well qualified. He's a Class A contractor, fully bonded and insured. And as you can see, he's got a great end product that he's been able to produce for Hopewell and other localities throughout Central Virginia. So his proposal will include all of the permitting necessary to complete the work, including all of the environmental permitting, all the building permits that are required for the project. His design work will include 3D renderings, all of the coordination with VDOT, thank goodness, all the construction drawings related to the pedestrian crossing, as well as the sealed engineered drawings, which will include civil work, structural survey, geotechnical, as well as the wetland delineation for that area there along the James River. And again, the finished product will include an 8-foot wide heavy timber piling, timber decking, 42-inch tall railings, and the structure will be fully ADA compliant. From a scheduling standpoint, we're looking at about 300 days. That would include 180 days for design and 120 days for construction. And the proposed fee for the project is $140,000, which we have in that project line and can cover the costs related to this proposal. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Okay. I suppose we'll ask questions when we do the contract next month, but at this point, are there any?
I would just say one, as somebody that's in desperate need of redoing their back deck, I see a lot of wood there, so what is the ongoing, is there some sort of ongoing maintenance?
That's a great question. Yes, sir. There is. The good news is that it's the type of timbering and the required materials that's required for this product. It's in the way it's designed and the way it's laid out. The concern was related to how close it was to the river and what kind of damage we were looking at. What I'll do is I'll bring this picture back up and maybe you can see it. But right here, the actual structure would go right in here. It wouldn't swing out into the water. And there's an abutment, a concrete abutment here and here. And it would bisect those. So essentially, it would be armored from any type of flooding and debris that would come down through that area there in Tucker Park. If you were to extend it out over the water, it would be susceptible to large tree damage. And you can see the big piles of debris that pile up along those abutments. By placing it where the contractor has proposed, it essentially armors that in close to the bank. Now, you're going to have regular ongoing maintenance as it relates to replacing lumber and things of that nature, but this is pretty heavy-duty stuff.
Power washing, I mean, those.
Absolutely. We'll have to power wash it. If it floods, we will have to do some power washing on it. But all in all, I think with the costs associated with it, it's a very worthwhile project, and and I think it'll serve our community well and provide a safe access between both the eastern and the western side of the park. Right now, you have to get in your car to make it to the other side, and this would solve that pedestrian access problem that we have down there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
No other questions?
I'm very glad to see this because ever since the boat landing was first, the idea was first born, there was conversation about access to both sides. And this has been talked about since well back on my time on the Recreation Advisory Board, and it's nice to see it come through. The other thing it's going to help us with is events at Tucker Park where we have limited parking. People are going to be parked on the other side, and they can walk across safely without having to dodge cars trying to zoom down 522. So it's a nice project. It's going to be very, very well received.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Stamey.
Thank you.
So open the public hearing.
So, Jonathan Lau, 1521. This looks like a win-win. Some of the questions have already been asked, and is there an estimated time life for this? Is it 10 years? I mean, again, Mr. Peterson can help me with the math. I think that's $16,000 a year. One of the things I am curious is, do we have, I guess we'll call it a cost benefit as to how many people will use this? I've been to several, the River Fest, when we were actually allowed to have River Fests there. But I'm not sure if there's an anticipated 10,000 people a year or 500 people a week or any of those kind of anticipated uses. And then there seems to be this abundance of grant money that's out there and available. Is this anything that could qualify for grants from somebody? I see one member of the board shaking her head, so we know who that is. But it looks like a pretty win-win-win, and I'm enamored of the idea that it's coming in for less money than what had originally had been looked at with concrete and I don't want to call it over-engineering, but maybe that would have been the word for it. So I hope this does proceed, and it's local folks. That's nice too.
Thank you, Mr. Lau. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, close the public hearing. As Mr. Stamey said, there is no vote. We will look at this next at a meeting next month. The next item is the ordinance to amend the Goochland County Code. Ms. McGee?
Yes, members of the Board of Supervisors, as you recall, last month I brought before you, I think, 6 different public hearing ordinance amendments on a variety of issues. Those arose from the General Assembly actions earlier this year, but by and large, all the bills that the General Assembly passed affecting local government got sent out to departments, obtained responses, and came before you on all of those things. It was definitely a shotgun approach on taking care of everything before you. As I brought this ordinance amendment before you to amend the county ordinance with respect to lawsuits on performance bonds, there were some very good questions asked by the board members about the circumstances under which it arose and what effect it could have on our contracting and other abilities. I was able to dig in to the specific circumstances of this bill. In fact, I had a lengthy conversation with the Attorney General who negotiated it. And so it's back before you today to let you know that the surety industry actually requested this bill. They requested the change of the statute of limitations from 1 year to 5 years and the language affecting exactly when that time period starts. And so it is believed that this will have a positive effect on our contractors or a neutral effect at worst. But it puts building claims on performance bonds in a similar situation to the actual construction itself. At the conclusion of it, there's a limited period of time to sue, 5 years in this case. Under the previous state law, you could sue, a claim might not arise for the entire life of a building, and then you could sue 20 years from now, you would have a year to sue. And that was just a risk that the surety companies actually had not anticipated and didn't recognize. It had come up in a litigation involving the state in the past couple of years, and this was to correct that situation. I do believe that the county would still be in a good position to take any action it may need to on performance bonds. Approximately 95 or 98% of all defects in construction are discovered in the first 5 years, and so it provides enough time. It's a very reasonable compromise for what we have today and being able to still take action. So I appreciate the opportunity that you provided me to come back with a great deal more detail about the circumstances of the action and to explain that it should be beneficial for really just putting the sureties, the contractors, and the county in a relatively fair position with respect to being able to sue it out on performance bonds if needed. I do ask that you approve the ordinance amendment for the county code, and we're happy to take any questions after we have public comment from the citizens. Or now, take questions now too.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McGee. Any questions at this point? Okay, so we will open the public hearing. This ordinance change regarding competitive sealed bidding. What a great topic. Everybody's excited about this one, right? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. All right, gentlemen.
Madam Chair, first of all, thank you, Ms. McGee, for getting back to us and with all that detail and addressing our questions from last month. And I move that we amend Goochland County Code Section 11-27 to change the time frame for action against a surety on a performance bond from 1 year to 5 years, and to clarify when a contract has been completed. I know this is making it consistent with state law, so that is my motion.
Okay, we have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. No further discussion. Mr. Stabey, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Ms. Laskowlet?
Yes. Okay, you have your approval.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no further business coming from the board, we will adjourn to September the 1st. We have ribbon cuttings at the Goochland Business Center at 1 p.m., the Goochland Registrar Building at 1:30 p.m. Regular meeting starts at, excuse me. Regular meeting starts at 2 p.m., 6 p.m. is our public hearings. I'd like to remind everyone that everyone is invited to join Friday, September the 11th at 9:45 a.m. for the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony at Company 5. It's open to the public. In addition, at the same day, everyone is invited to join on Friday, September 11th at 7 p.m. for the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony at Company 1 Firehouse, also open to the public. Also, on Tuesday, September 29th at 12 noon, we will hold our annual legislative luncheon. Board of Supervisors, School Board, and other county officials will sit down with our General Assembly legislative delegation at Central High School to talk about legislation upcoming this year, and that is also open to the public. So if there's no further business, then this meeting is adjourned.